The knock on my door came at 8:47 p.m. By 8:52, I was a widow. By midnight, I was the mother of a dying child. And by the end of that week, I realized my family, the people who were supposed to love me, had chosen a beach vacation over my son's funeral. I didn't just lose my husband and my child. I lost every illusion I ever had about loyalty, love, and blood. This isn't just a story about grief. It's about what happens when the people who should stand beside you vanish. And how I turned heartbreak into something they never expected, a clean break. Would you like a variation of this for a female narrator? Or a version with cliffhanger phrasing like, "And what I did next? It changed everything." Just say the word. Have you ever had one of those moments? The kind that slices through your world like a knife, leaving nothing the same afterward? I'm Leah Morgan, and at exactly 8:47 p.m. on a Saturday night, a soft knock at my front door shattered the life I thought was mine. That evening had been ordinary in the most comforting way. I had just finished folding laundry. My husband Daniel and our son Ethan were supposed to be on their way home from their father-son hiking trip up near Red Creek Ridge. We'd planned it all week, checked the weather, packed snacks, picked out trail maps like it was some big expedition. And honestly, it was for them. These trips were their thing. I stood in the kitchen, making tea, humming under my breath. That's when it came. Knock, knock. Not loud, not urgent, but something in my gut went still. I opened the door. 2 officers, one young, one older. Both with that look, the kind that says this isn't a routine visit. That look that makes your heart lurch before they even speak. "Are you Leah Morgan?" the older one asked gently. "Yes, I am," I whispered. "I'm Officer Jensen, and this is Officer Rivera. May we come in?" I nodded. My legs barely carried me to the couch. What came next didn't feel real. "There was an accident this evening," Jensen began. "Your husband and son were involved in a collision on Highway 17, around 6:15 p.m. A buzzing started in my ears, the kind of white noise that makes your hands go numb. "Are they okay?" I asked. "Please, just tell me." Rivera looked down like the floor might give him better words. "The accident involved a drunk driver who ran a red light at the Ridgepoint intersection," Jensen said. "Your husband was pronounced dead at the scene." Dead. Dead. It didn't register. Not at first. He had just kissed me goodbye that morning. He said they'd be back by dinner. He promised Ethan would be in bed by 9, that he'd tell me stories from the trail. I was already shaking. "What about my son, Ethan?" "He survived, but he's in critical condition. He was airlifted to St. Francis Medical Center. They're performing emergency surgery right now. Head trauma. It's serious." My vision blurred. I think I dropped the mug I was holding, or maybe it just slipped through my fingers. The next hour moved like a dream. Officer Rivera drove me to the hospital while Officer Jensen followed behind in my car. I remember the harsh fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic, the cold plastic chairs, the nurse who asked me to sign something, though I had no idea what. Dr. Ellen Rhodes met me in the ICU hallway, a short woman with tired eyes and a soft voice. She spoke gently, but her words sliced through me. "Ethan suffered significant brain injury. We've relieved the pressure, but he's in a medically induced coma. It's touch and go." I stood behind the glass, staring at my little boy. 10 years old, tubes in his arms, machines breathing for him, bandages around his head. He didn't look like Ethan. Not the boy who loved dinosaurs and played goalie for his soccer team. Not the boy who still called me mommy when he had nightmares. I placed my hand on the glass. Everything in me broke. At 11:43 p.m., I called my parents. My mother answered, "Leah, it's late. What's wrong?" "Daniel is dead," I choked. Ethan's in a coma." Silence. Then, "Oh my God, we'll come first thing in the morning." First thing in the morning. Not now, not immediately, not even we're on our way. And that was when I felt the first fracture in something deeper than grief. Something I wouldn't fully understand until much later. I spent the rest of the night sitting by Ethan's bed, holding his tiny hand in both of mine, whispering to him that I was there, that I wouldn't leave, that he wasn't alone. But I was. And I didn't know it yet, but that knock on the door wasn't just the start of grief. It was the beginning of knowing who truly stands beside you when everything falls apart. The day after the accident, I was functioning, but barely. My body moved on autopilot, but my mind was somewhere else, still back on that winding highway, still replaying the words, "He didn't make it. Your son is critical." That morning, my parents arrived at the hospital, just as they said they would. Not in the middle of the night, not with urgency, but around 9 o'clock a.m., as if they were visiting a dentist, not a grieving daughter. My dad hugged me like he wasn't sure if he should. My mom gave me that stiff shoulder pat she always used when emotions made her uncomfortable. They sat beside me for maybe an hour. They asked how Ethan was doing. They said, "We're so sorry about Daniel," but their eyes wandered, their bodies fidgeted. And before long, Mom said, "We should head out. I need to call your aunt about the news." I nodded. I didn't have the energy to ask them to stay. That was the last time they offered to help, or even asked if I needed anything. The next few days were the blur no one prepares you for. Hospitals, death certificates, arrangements, people texting, "Let me know if you need anything," while hoping I wouldn't. Daniel's parents had both passed years ago, and I was an only child. So the task of planning Daniel's funeral fell entirely on me. And I mean entirely. I called my mom that evening. "I could really use help with the arrangements," I said, swallowing the knot in my throat. "There's the venue, the service, music, flowers." Her voice, calm but distracted, cut in. "Actually, honey, your sister and Kevin are moving into that apartment this week. You know, the one Daniel left you. We promised to help them move. We're kind of stretched thin." I blinked. "Mom, Daniel just died. You promised to help with the funeral." "I know, and we'll be there, Leah, but we already committed to helping them, and Vanessa gets really upset when plans change." I stared at the phone in my hand, dumbfounded. "So, helping them move is more important than helping me bury my husband?" "I didn't say that," she replied, "but you're strong. You always handle things." Strong? People always called me that like it was a compliment, but I wasn't strong, I was just alone. So I planned Daniel's funeral by myself. I chose the casket, the readings, the songs. I picked the navy suit he would wear, the tie he wore on our wedding day. I arranged for photos to be displayed on easels. Daniel with Ethan, Daniel laughing on the dock, Daniel grilling in the backyard in that ridiculous apron that said, "Kiss the cook." The funeral was held at a small chapel near our home, a modest service, just how Daniel would have liked it. Friends showed up, neighbors, people from Ethan's school. They shared stories about Daniel that made people laugh and cry all at once. And for a few fleeting minutes, I felt like I was wrapped in a warmth that hadn't existed since the knock on my door. Then I saw them. My parents, Vanessa and Kevin. They slipped into the back pew just as the service began. Vanessa wore sunglasses indoors. My mom held her purse like she was ready to leave at any second. They didn't speak to me afterward. They didn't help with cleanup, didn't ask if I was okay. They left before the final song finished playing. And just like that, I was reminded again, they came to be seen, not to support. Back home that night, I sat on the floor of the living room, still in black, heels kicked off, silence pressing down like a weight. The house felt impossibly quiet without Daniel's voice, or Ethan's footsteps running down the stairs. And still no one called. Not my mother, not Vanessa, not anyone who should have. So I did the only thing I could. I walked to Ethan's room, sat on the edge of his bed, and opened the book I'd brought from the hospital, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I read aloud chapter 1. I read to the boy who wasn't there, because it was the only thing that made me feel like someone was still listening. That night I understood something new. Grief is cruel, but abandonment, that's what truly breaks you. Hospitals are strange places. They're full of movement, of beeping monitors and rushing nurses, of urgent conversations and life or death decisions. And yet in Ethan's hospital room, time had stopped. It had been 3 days since Daniel's funeral. 3 days since I buried my husband and then came straight back here, to a cold hospital chair beside my son's bed. The machines surrounding him were constant companions now. I knew their rhythms, the soft whir of the ventilator, the gentle chime of the heart monitor. They became a kind of lullaby, one I hated, but one I depended on. Ethan looked so small beneath the hospital blanket, his head wrapped in gauze, one arm in a sling, a tube down his throat helping him breathe. But still, he was alive, and that was enough to make me keep going. Every morning, I'd wake up before sunrise, change clothes in the hospital restroom, grab a bitter coffee from the vending machine, and take my place by Ethan's side. And I'd talk about anything and everything. I read his school books aloud, his favorite, Percy Jackson. I told him about the squirrels outside the hospital window, the ones that chased each other across the wires. I talked about Daniel. I whispered how proud his dad would be if he could see him now, how brave he was being. And then I'd wait, for a twitch, a squeeze of my hand, a blink. But Ethan remained still, breathing but silent. Dr. Rhodes told me not to lose hope, that brain injuries were complicated and sometimes coma patients did wake up, after days, weeks, even months. So I clung to that. Hope became my oxygen. What I didn't expect was how quiet it would be from everyone else. My parents visited Ethan 3 times in 6 months. Each visit lasted no more than 20 minutes. They always had a reason to leave. The smell of hospitals gives your dad a headache. Mom forgot to defrost dinner. Vanessa's feeling emotional again. Vanessa never visited once. She and Kevin were now living in Daniel's old apartment downtown, the one I let them move into, rent-free, as a gift when things were tight. They'd thanked me, once, then silence. Not a single call to ask how Ethan was doing. Not a single "do you need anything?" Not even a card. I'd check my phone sometimes just to be sure it wasn't broken, but it wasn't. They just weren't calling. One night in April, as I sat by Ethan's bed reading chapter 7, I heard footsteps behind me. For a second, my heart jumped. Maybe it was Vanessa. Maybe she'd finally come. But it was just the janitor. Quiet and kind, he nodded at me and kept walking. And I realized I was hoping for people who had already shown me who they were. They weren't coming. They were living their lives while I lived in a sterile room filled with fear and machines. But I kept going. Every day I showed up. I brought Ethan new socks with little cartoon avocados on them. I played his favorite song softly through a Bluetooth speaker. I told him stories about the time Daniel burned the Thanksgiving turkey and tried to blame the oven. I told him about the snow that fell last week, even though he couldn't see it. I was fighting for him. And even if no one else was, I would keep fighting. Because that's what love looks like. Not birthday posts, not borrowed casseroles, not performative thoughts and prayers. Real love shows up. Real love sits beside you when there's nothing left to say. Real love doesn't keep score, it stays. 6 months passed. Every morning, work. Every afternoon, hospital. Every night, silence. And Ethan didn't wake up. But I still showed up, because maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would be the day. What I didn't know was that tomorrow would break me in a way I didn't think was still possible. It was a Tuesday morning in July when my phone rang. Dr. Rhodes never called unless it was serious. I knew that. And the moment I heard her voice, soft, quiet, careful, I knew. "Mrs. Morgan, I need you to come in right away." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab my car keys. The drive to the hospital felt both endless and instant. I don't remember the traffic. I don't remember the parking lot. I just remember the look on Dr. Rhodes's face when I stepped into the hallway outside Ethan's room. A look of apology, of finality. "Leah, I'm so sorry. Ethan passed away about an hour ago. His heart just stopped. The trauma was too much for his body to keep fighting." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I just blinked. Like my brain refused to accept that the only thing I had left, my little boy, was gone. He had survived the crash, held on for 6 months, and then quietly, he was gone. I held him one last time. His hand in mine still warm, his eyes closed like he was just sleeping, his face peaceful, almost angelic. I whispered in his ear that I loved him, that he could rest now, that his dad would be waiting for him, that I would survive, somehow. And then I walked out of that hospital room, and the world was different. Not just empty, hollow. When I got home that afternoon, I sat on the floor of my living room. I didn't cry. I just stared at the silence, at the toys still in the basket in the corner, at the empty coffee mug still sitting on the table where Daniel used to read the morning paper. Eventually, I picked up my phone. I called my mother. She picked up after a few rings. "Leah, what is it?" "Ethan died today." My voice sounded flat, almost robotic. There was a pause. "Oh, Leah, I'm sorry to hear that." That was it. No gasp, no "we'll be right there," no tears. Just sorry to hear that. "I need help with the funeral," I said, quieter now. "I can't do this alone again." Her response, I'll never forget it. "Well, that's going to be a problem. We won't be able to help, and we won't be able to attend either." I froze. "What?" "We're flying to Cancun tomorrow. Vanessa and Kevin booked the trip months ago. We've spent over $8,000. The vouchers are non-refundable." I wasn't sure if I was still breathing. "Mom, my son just died. Your grandson just died." "I know, sweetie, but you're strong. You handled Daniel's funeral so well. You don't really need us there. Besides, Vanessa's already emotional about the baby and—" "I don't care," I snapped. "You're choosing a beach over your own grandson's funeral." "Leah," she said, her tone shifting, annoyed now. "You're being dramatic. We will light a candle for him in Mexico." And then she hung up. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. Vanessa. I didn't want to answer it. I should have let it go to voicemail. But some part of me needed to hear what she had to say. "Hey, Rachel, Mom called me. Listen, I'm really sorry about Ethan, but we can't cancel the trip." She didn't sound sorry. She sounded bothered. "It's Ethan's funeral, Vanessa." She scoffed. "Look, I'm pregnant, okay? This is my last chance to relax before the baby comes. I'm not giving that up just because your son died." The words hit me harder than the knock on my door 6 months ago. "This might sound harsh," she added, "but his death is your problem, not mine." I sat there, stunned, numb. She continued, "You've always been the strong one, the overachiever. You'll handle it, but don't drag the rest of us into your grief, okay?" Then she hung up. In less than 10 minutes, the last strands of illusion I had about my family burned to ash. I thought maybe I don't have a family. Because family doesn't book vacations over coffins. Family doesn't tell you your child's death is your problem. Family doesn't leave you alone in a hospital room twice. And that's when it hit me. If I couldn't count on them in death, I didn't need them in life. After the funeral, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or collapse in a heap on the kitchen floor like you see in movies. I just sat still. I had buried my husband. I had buried my son. And now I was sitting in a quiet house with 2 graves and 0 phone calls from the people who were supposed to love me. That silence was louder than anything. But within that silence, a strange thing happened. Clarity. Sharp, cold, pure. Like the kind of clarity you get when you're done begging people to care. The day after Ethan's funeral, I got up early. I drank my coffee in the same mug Daniel once used. I packed a small duffel bag. And I drove to the downtown apartment that Daniel had inherited from his grandmother. The one I had let Vanessa and Kevin live in, rent-free, for almost 2 years. I had a key, of course I did. It was still my apartment. I walked in without knocking. It was quiet, tidy, too clean, like no one had lived through grief here. There were beach towels drying in the hallway, a brand new baby swing in the living room, a half-open suitcase with Cancun tags still on the handle. And that was all it took. I started packing, quietly, methodically. Clothes, shoes, dishes, bathroom products, that ridiculous lava lamp Kevin bought from a flea market. Everything went into boxes and trash bags. No labeling, no organizing, no fragile stickers. Just removal. 3 hours later, the place was stripped down to walls. Then I called a moving company, paid them extra to come the same day, told them to deliver every last item to my parents' living room, and to drop it. No need for neatness. Next, I called a locksmith. New deadbolt, new keys, new everything. By the time Vanessa and Kevin returned from Cancun, tan and tired, their keys wouldn't work. They weren't tenants. They were guests. And the invitation had expired. But I wasn't done. I went home, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank account. And for the first time in years, I really looked. Monthly charges I'd long forgotten about. Little drains that added up to thousands, all to keep them comfortable. My parents' car insurance, canceled. The health supplement I paid for every month without the masking, canceled. Dad's woodworking magazine, gone. Mom's Netflix account, she never even learned how to log in herself, canceled. Vanessa's expenses? Phone bill, canceled. Car payment, canceled. That gym membership I gifted her on her wedding day that she never once thanked me for, canceled. And it hit me. I had been giving my family almost $3,000 a month every month for 4 straight years. All while they skipped funerals, missed hospital visits, and posted beach selfies with captions like, "So grateful to be with my amazing family." I screenshotted everything. Her smile, their cocktails, that sunset. So that later, if I ever doubted myself, if I ever felt guilty, I could remember what their love looked like when I needed it most. 3 days passed. I waited. I made dinner. I did laundry. I sorted Ethan's books into donation piles. And then it happened. The phone calls started. First my mother, then Vanessa, then Kevin, then all of them again. I didn't answer. Not once. That night at 10:14 p.m., headlights lit up my driveway. 4 silhouettes appeared on my porch. A fist banged hard against the front door. "Leah, open this door, now!" Vanessa's voice, shrill, demanding, enraged. I stood up, walked calmly to the door, and opened it. There they were, all 4 of them, red-faced, jet-lagged, and deeply confused. My mother pushed past me into the house. "We need to talk." Oh yes, I thought. We do. But not the kind of talk they were expecting. My living room had never felt smaller. My parents stood by the fireplace. Vanessa paced. Kevin hovered near the door like he was considering an exit strategy. And me? I stood calmly in front of them all, not shaking, not crying, not begging. Just done. Vanessa broke first. "What the hell did you do to our apartment?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, let them squirm. Then finally, "It's not your apartment, it never was." Vanessa's mouth fell open. "You can't just evict us, I'm pregnant." "I didn't evict you," I said flatly. "I took back what was mine. I let you stay there rent-free, out of generosity. That generosity ended when you skipped my son's funeral for a beachside cocktail." Kevin cleared his throat. "Look, Leah, we understand you're grieving." "No, you don't understand anything," I cut in. "You weren't there. None of you were. Not for Daniel, not for Ethan, not for me." My mother stepped forward, hands up like she was calming a child. "Leah, honey, this isn't how family handles things." I laughed, quiet, bitter. "Family, is that what this is?" Dad chimed in now, voice stiff. "We've had disagreements before, but you can't just cut people out over a misunderstanding." Vanessa's eyes lit up with sudden calculation. "Okay, you've made your point. You were hurt. Fine. But now that we're back, you can give us the new keys, right?" I stared at her, not angry, not cruel, just tired. "No," I said. Her smile disappeared. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, you're not moving back in, ever." Vanessa stepped forward, voice rising. "But I'm pregnant!" And you were pregnant when you told me my child's death was my problem. You were pregnant when you told me you wouldn't give up your vacation because it was your last chance to relax. She looked like she'd been slapped. I didn't mean it like that. You meant every word. I remember all of them, exactly as you said them. Mom turned toward me. Leah, please, we're family. You're taking this too far. Cutting us off financially? Throwing your sister onto the street? That's when it slipped out. Cold. Final. I didn't even raise my voice. You were never going to be there for me. You were only here for the benefits. Dad opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. Do you want to know how much I've given this family? Every month? Every year? They stared at me, unsure of what was coming. I paid your car insurance, your prescriptions, your credit cards, Vanessa's phone bill, her car, even her gym membership she never used. I covered birthdays, holidays, emergencies you created. And through it all, I thought, this is what family does. I looked directly at my mother. And then you told me your beach trip was more important than Ethan's funeral. Mom's lip quivered. Leah, we didn't know it would mean this much to you. That did it. This much? My child is dead. Your grandson is in the ground, and you toasted margaritas over his grave. Vanessa flinched. You're just bitter, because I'm having a baby and you're not. The room went dead still. Even Kevin looked horrified. She crossed her arms. You're jealous, that I still have a future, that I'm moving on. I stepped forward, voice low but unwavering. I'd give every breath I have to hold my son again. And you used his death to make yourself the victim. No one spoke. No one moved. So I finished it. You're all cut off, financially, emotionally, permanently. I'm not your wallet, I'm not your crutch, and I'm not your daughter anymore. Dad tried one last plea. You'll regret this. One day you'll be alone. I already was, I said, and you were all fine with it. They left after that. Not with a bang, not with slamming doors. Just silence, cold, final. Vanessa muttering something about lawyers. My mother dabbing her eyes. Kevin avoiding mine. My father saying, this is a mistake, as he stepped off my porch. I closed the door, locked it, then leaned back against the wood and exhaled the heaviest breath of my life. And for the first time in months, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, but free. It's been 6 months since I closed the door on my family. 6 months since they stood in my living room, outraged, entitled, and still convinced that my pain was something they could ignore and my generosity something they could consume. And in those 6 months, I haven't heard a word from them. No calls, no letters, no guilt-tripping voicemails. Just silence. But this time, it wasn't painful. It was beautiful. After they left, I started making changes. Real ones. I rented out Daniel's apartment to a young couple in their 20s who pay on time, say thank you, and once brought me a homemade pie just because I waved at their dog. I closed the joint account I used to help my parents. I sold the SUV that Daniel and I had planned to give to Ethan when he turned 16. I donated most of Ethan's things, not out of anger, but out of love. I kept a few pieces, though. The dinosaur hoodie he wore every week for a year, his soccer cleats, his favorite book, the one I read to him every night in the hospital. I left my job. Accounting had always been stable, practical, but it had never been me, not really. So I booked a plane ticket, then another, and then another. Ireland, Italy, Japan. I sat on cliffs overlooking the sea, walked through temples with paper wishes hanging from trees. I stood in silent cathedrals where the walls felt heavy with prayer, and I whispered Ethan's name into the stillness. I didn't run away, I unlocked myself. From the grief, from the guilt, from the people who mistook my kindness for obligation. Eventually I'll settle down again, somewhere quiet. I've been thinking about Colorado. I always loved the mountains, the hush of snow, the solitude that doesn't feel lonely. People sometimes ask me if I miss my family. Here's the truth. I miss the version of them I thought I had, the one I made excuses for, the one I defended for years. But the real version, the one who chose Cancun over Ethan's funeral, the one who told me his death was my problem, the one who toasted cocktails while I lowered my child into the ground? No, I don't miss them at all. I grieved them too, the parents, the sister, the illusion. And now I'm done. Some nights I still dream about Daniel. He's smiling, always, telling me a bad pun, usually involving fish. Sometimes Ethan's there too, laughing, running ahead, asking if he can stay up 5 more minutes. I wake up with tears in my eyes. But they're soft now. Not sharp, not blinding. Grief hasn't left, I don't think it ever will. But I've made peace with it. I've learned that family isn't always blood. It's who shows up when it matters. It's who holds your hand in the dark. It's who stands beside you when the weight of the world crushes your chest. My real family was never the people who shared my DNA. It was the nurse who brought me soup when I hadn't eaten all day. It was the janitor who nodded every night like he saw me. It was Susan, my coworker turned sister, who helped plan both funerals when no one else did. It's the people I've met since, the ones who see me, the ones who choose me. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever been abandoned by the ones who were supposed to love you, if you've ever been told you were too strong to need help, if you've ever buried someone you loved while the rest of the world kept partying, let me tell you something. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to cut the cord. You are allowed to choose peace over people who only show up when they want something. Sometimes the most painful goodbyes are the ones that save your soul. And when you finally say them, when you finally mean them, the world gets quieter. But somehow it finally starts to feel like home. If you're still holding on to people who only show up when it's convenient, if you're still calling it love when what you feel is exhaustion, then maybe today is the day you stop asking why they hurt you and start asking why you kept letting them. Sometimes the most powerful act of love is letting go of the story, of the guilt, of the people who never deserve the seat at your table. Because family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shows up again and again and again. This was my story, but if it helped you see yours a little more clearly, you're not alone. Subscribe to Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending for more stories like this, about strength, clarity, and the freedom that comes when you finally choose yourself.